Hello again, this is Mike and I am the Sports History Collector. Today we have Athletes at War, Volume 19, World War II, featuring baseball's Lou Brissie. Please stay tuned to the very end and you'll get a chance to hear the man himself talk about his time during the war. The following contains excerpts from the great Sabre article by Bill Nolan. Lou Brissie was a Major League ball player that played for parts of 7 seasons with the Philadelphia Athletics and the Cleveland Indians, compiling a lifetime 44-48 one-loss record with a 4.07 ERA and 1 All-Star game appearance. Fairly pedestrian by today's stat-driven standards. What those stats don't tell are the blood, sweat, and sacrifice Lou Brissie had to endure to attain those statistics. Lou started playing baseball for the local textile mill at an early age, much like his 5 uncles before him. He caught the eye of Brooklyn Dodgers scouts and was even offered a $25,000 signing bonus, a hefty sum in those days, but Lou's dad had his eyes on his son signing with the Philadelphia Athletics because owner and manager Connie Mack had a reputation of working with young players to go to college first before joining the team. After working out for Mr. Mack, Brissie was given a deal where he would pitch for the Presbyterian College team for 3 years, then report to the Athletics. World War II interrupted those plans, however. Brissie reported to basic training in April of 1943, and it was only a few months later that he learned of his uncle Robert Brissie's death in North Africa. Robert was a little less than 2 years older than Lou and was in the artillery. He was a private with the 354th Coast Artillery Battalion. He died on August 4th, 1943, and is buried in Tunisia. Lou doesn't know the details of Robert's death, but remembers, "He was my first catcher when we were kids growing up. I always would throw to him and we'd always talk about going to the big leagues together." In the later half of 1944, Lou was shipped overseas, serving with the 88th Infantry Division, also called the Blue Devils. He saw heavy combat in November 1944. During the 14 months the division was in Italy, it suffered very heavy casualties. When his G Company unit came under exceptionally heavy artillery fire on December 7th, 8 enlisted men from the company and 3 of their 4 officers were killed or wounded. His last conscious memory was of himself half in and half out of water and mud in a creek bed, 1 foot severely damaged and the other one seemingly missing. Left for dead, Brissie was found unconscious several hours later, and doctors were ready to amputate. In 3 days of visiting hospitals, he was persuasive enough to convince doctors not to amputate his leg, and Dr. Wilbur Brubaker of the Army Hospital in Naples worked on saving the limb. "Once he operated on me," Brissie told Baseball Digest, "I didn't wonder if I could make it back to pitch, but how I could do it." Lou kept in correspondence with Connie Mack, and after Mr. Mack heard of the injury, he wrote to Brissie on December 28th, just 3 weeks after the wound. "He told me that my duty now was to try to get well, and whenever I felt I was ready to play, he would see I got the opportunity. That meant an awful lot to me. It was a tremendous motivator. He would need it." It took 2 years and 23 major operations on his leg, with 40 blood transfusions, but Corporal Brissie held to the hope of a return to baseball, albeit with a metal plate in his leg. He was apparently the first soldier in the Mediterranean theater to be given penicillin in order to fight infection. "They had to reconstruct my leg with wire," he said. Strange as it may sound, he was probably fortunate that the German shell hit as close to him as it did. Shrapnel tends to disperse upwards and outwards, and had it landed even a little further away, more would likely have cut into him above the knee and would more likely than not killed him. Brissie was awarded the Bronze Star and 2 Purple Hearts. After months in rehab hospitals, still hobbling around at home on crutches, Brissie told the Greenville News that his life's ambition remained to pitch big league baseball, and if I can't make the grade, I would at least like a job in the big league ballpark. "And you know, the man I want to work for? Mr. Connie Mack. His letters to me were wonderful. He wants me to come to Philadelphia as soon as I am able, just for a visit, if nothing more." It was more than a year before Lou was able to get to the point that he could walk with a cane, but he began throwing a baseball. While still on crutches, in July 1945, he traveled to Shibe Park in Philadelphia and worked out for Mack. It was an unusual tryout. I propped up on one foot with a crutch and threw a few. He stayed for several days, not yet discharged from the Army, but on leave between operations. This was a determined man. For Mac's part, he gave Lou further encouragement, but there was real doubt in his mind. A year later, Mac confessed, "I'll never forget how he looked last summer. He had just undergone an operation and was about to undergo another one. He was on crutches, and I thought, poor boy, he'll never be able to pitch again." Lou kept working on it, and though he was derailed by a bone marrow infection in 1946, he convinced Mac of both his talent and his spirit. The Athletics owner declared, "If determination can do it, I know he'll make it." And make it he did. Within a year, with his legs stronger, he signed with the A's and started a very successful minor league year, which saw him win 25 games, propelling him to the majors the following year. And the rest is history. Lou Brissie, we thank you for your service and sacrifice. And now for some tidbits. On opening day, 1948, Lou was given the honor of starting the second game against the Boston Red Sox during the Patriots' Day doubleheader. Lou held the Red Sox to just 4 hits while striking out 7 and walking just 1. He drove in the winning run with a 2 RBI single in the 4th inning. In the 6th inning, Ted Williams hit a hard shot up the middle, and it hit off the metal plate in Lou's leg. Williams, Brissie said, could have had a double, but held at first base, called time, and came over to check on me at the mound. When Ted leaned down, and I said, "Damn it, Ted, why don't you pull the ball?" Lou won the ball game 4-2, but Ted got Lou later. On May 31st, Ted hit a 2-run homer in Shive Park over the light tower in right field. Lou remembers, "On his way around the bases, I said, 'Ted, I didn't mean pull it that much.'" He was such a compelling story that Columbia Pictures expressed interest in making a film of his successful struggle to make the majors and pitch for the Athletics. The chief of staff of the 300th General Hospital in Naples had known Lou there and had been reassigned to Walter Reed Hospital. He wrote Columbia and urged the idea on them, but Lou deflected the inquiry. "They wrote me and I wrote back and I told them I just wasn't interested," he explained. "I left a lot of guys in those hospitals and I just didn't feel right about it." That's the type of man Lou Brissie was. Now for my collection is a beautiful 1952 Bowman signed by Lou Brissie. The colors on the card are just beautiful, with the deep greens of the background and the blue and red on the uniform and hat. Just pops off the card. Adds some very nice centering and a bold blue ink signature across his chest, and you have a card that anyone would be proud of. I know I am. Well, that's all for this episode of Athletes at War. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Lou Brissie, Corporal, U.S. Army. Served with them up until the time I was wounded in December 1944. Well, I laid out for a while, and when they started back with me, they were throwing in air burst, and I got bumped off of the front of the Jeep they had me on. And but it took, we were hit about 10 in the morning, and it was close to dark before I got to an aid station. But in those mountains, in the late afternoon, it could have been 4 o'clock. You know, I'm just not sure. I originally thought it took about 8 hours, but that didn't. When I sat down and think about that, didn't make sense, because in 8 hours it had been absolutely dark in the high mountains up there, like that. And then December, when it gets dark early anyway. But it did take a while, and we lost 3 officers in that barrage, company commander and 2 platoon leaders, several squad leaders, and I think they said 8 riflemen, I believe. I was told it was 180 millimeter. They had a partisan for the radio who was spotting for them, and spotted us coming up after we had gotten a shower and a hot breakfast. They were bringing us back up behind the line, and we were going to rest there until that night, and then we were to walk back into our position. We'd walked out the night before, replaced by part of the 85th Division, and brought our mess kits and canteens and rifles and helmets, left everything because we were going to come back and rest that afternoon, and then walk back in that night and assume the same position. It was then the winter line where there was no movement at all as far as the lines were concerned. It was only patrols, theirs and ours, at that time. So there wasn't any movement of positioning, really.